Welcome to the latest episode of the Federal's Worldly Wise, a weekly video show that attempts to decode trending international issues. The just concluded 17th BRICS summit in Brazil earlier this week, among other things, has managed to irritate United States President Donald Trump. This means it has done something right. The summit has been held at a time when the world is going through one of its biggest challenges in recent memory, torn by differences, wars, and an economic crisis affecting millions. Is BRICS, which aims to strengthen multilateralism, in a position to make a positive difference? As one of the top countries of the so-called Global South, India is set to host the next year's summit and then head it for a year. With Trump breathing down the neck of all countries in the form of reciprocal tariffs and political interventions, the BRICS has a job in hand to combat unilateralism and ensure a better deal for developing nations in the South. However, there's a question mark on whether BRICS can make a difference politically. The raging war between Russia and Ukraine refuses to die down. Israel's brazen assault on Gaza continues into the second year, with close to 60,000 reportedly killed so far. BRICS has been unable to play peacemaker in either. There has been talk of the group piloting efforts to cut the dollar to size and reduce dependency on the currency through de-dollarization. This at a time when Trump's reciprocal tariffs is threatening to affect the world's trade and economy. To understand where BRICS stands and how the world perceives it, we have a special guest with us, developments in multilateral organizations over the last 3 decades. Based in Switzerland, senior journalist D Ravi Kanth, from his perch in Geneva, has witnessed closely how international groupings have worked and reported on them for publications worldwide. Ravi Kanth is currently working as the Geneva editor for Washington Trade Daily and contributor for South-North Development Monitor, or SUNS, published by the Third World Network based in Penang in Malaysia. Ravi started his career in journalism in PTI, followed by India Post, Independent, The Economic Times, Business Standard, and Asia Times. Ravi moved to Geneva in 1997, initially to work with the South-North Development Monitor, and then with other publications. He has specialized in global trade, the multilateral trade agreements, the rules-based World Trade Organization, and covered WTO's 13 ministerial meetings since 1994. His expertise and reportage on trade issues has been a vital source of information and analysis for trade negotiators. Who better than Ravi Kanth to give an insight into BRICS, its 16-year history, and whether the group can make itself heard in today's chaotic world? Welcome to the Worldly Wise, Ravi.
Thank you, Dakshin. Thank you for inviting me for this discussion at a very critical and crucial period in human history, particularly in the history of the 21st century, following all the major wars and continuing wars. This is indeed one of the challenging times for BRICS and other developing countries of Global South.
Welcome, Ravi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with the latest development.
Yes.
Donald Trump refers to BRICS as anti-American. He has threatened 10% more tariffs, especially for BRICS members. Why is Trump so angry with BRICS?
We have to first put this threat in a context that is currently unfolding in the world. Namely, the US is rapidly declining hegemonic power. Whether we like it or not, its decline has begun quite some time back, but it is now accelerating. So, for a declining hegemonic power, everything is a threat. More so when a new grouping of global south is emerging despite a lot of hurdles, despite challenging times. It's certainly seen as a threat to several monopolies, mainly dollar monopoly in the global trade, or even South-South trade among South-South countries. This is a big threat. So here we are at a time when Trump sees all these threats are primarily targeted at the United States. More so when United States itself is failing to rise both for the principles it had created in the global architecture, whether it is the United Nations or followed by other international bodies, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. So we see an assault by the Trump administration on all the global systems that have been in existence for the past 80 years. So, more so at this time, when a new grouping with certain potential to coalesce all the developing countries is a very big threat. But Trump has, of course, overplayed this threat as compared to his predecessors. His predecessors were undermining it behind the doors. We have here Donald Trump, whose assault is on the in the public domain day in and day out. The 10% tariff, for example, he had announced some time ago, but now he repeated and reiterated on Tuesday, is a clear indication that he is planning to threaten everybody who comes in the way of accomplishing or achieving his very dubious goals. I mean, for example, this reciprocal tariffs is structured on a basis that countries have been making huge trade surpluses with the United States. Even though it was the United States, if you systematically assess and analyze the gains from the multilateral trading system, particularly the World Trade Organization, which was created after United States initiative to have this organization with binding rules. There was an ambassador called Ambassador Narayanan who had in 98 and 99 actually asked the WTO to make an assessment who benefited out of the WTO. Though the study was never conducted in its sincerity, it clearly revealed the US was the principal beneficiary of the multilateral trade. Once it brought services, it brought intellectual property rights like the patents, the trademarks, the copyrights. So if ever if any study is done, you will certainly find that the US is not the loser, but a beneficiary of all this. Yet, the emergence of China since 2001, when it joined the WTO, has significantly changed the global, forces in play. So ever since then, the US started the campaign against China, and then holding China as responsible for the US problems. Now, since 2006, when the first BRICS initiative took place, this was in St. Petersburg, at an outreach meeting of the the G8 countries. So Russia organized this small meeting between Russia, China, and Brazil to start, working on a plan to create a kind of a small regional grouping. It was not primarily regional, but it was a grouping which is touching several continents. Then later South Africa joined. And so the first meeting took place in 2009, again in Russia at the Russian initiative. Then subsequently it had held 16 meetings. The latest one is the 17th. Now, if you compare the BRICS, evolution of BRICS and how it emerged among a declining multilateral trading system because of the US assaults, successive US administrations, starting with Obama, prior to Bush, followed by Obama, they have sort of atrophied the WTO by undermining its binding powers in what is called the enforcement function. So we are then this BRICS meeting since 2009 to now it's primarily started as a discussion forum or a dialogue among these key countries, but then it began taking a shape and a structure. So today, Donald Trump is understandably for him, it's a disconcerting movement that this could pose a big threat to, the reciprocal tariff regime that he had announced, which is based on unsustainable grounds. That, ultimately countries' trade surpluses and deficits have different macroeconomic reasons, but not that you can take what you call unilateral tariffs or impose them. Basically, he's doing what could be called or extortive processes. For example, he had issued what you call on the Truth Social or in his website post, where he said that by 1st August, countries have to pay. The word payment and pay. It sounds very crude. It also bears somewhat resemblance to what the East India Company used to do, or the colonial enterprises. That you force the countries to pay. So Donald Trump is a new avatar of the East India Company in a way that he is continuing to make threats on a daily basis and in very crude and naked unilateral or what you call hegemonic power language, which doesn't gel.
But Ravi, if you take BRICS as a group, each country has its own individual relationship with the US. For instance, India has a special relationship with the US. So does China. Despite the rivalry, China and the US have a very strong trade relationship. So how will these impinge on the decisions taken by BRICS? And will it bring down the efficacy of BRICS or will it give it a leverage?
It has several aspects. First and foremost, BRICS started after G20. You remember G20 leaders meetings? That started in 2008, December. Till now, it's going on. They've had 20 odd meetings. So in these meetings, basically, you are getting proposals and, modifying, rectifying them and all. Similarly, BRICS, to the particular question that you asked, yes, you're right that it has countries with diverse trade interests. And it has also countries which have different types of relations with US. For example, with China and US, between China and US, it's not the same same relationship like the one between US and India. In the case of China, they're both almost equal on the table, and China has huge leverage compared to, say, India, which has been, openly embracing US much more than the BRICS. So you're right that there are these geopolitical kind of tensions and forces, as well as the proximity between these countries with the United States. That could definitely pose a problem. It has already posed a problem. For example, when a serious move was made for the BRICS currency payment methods between the BRICS members, which was the first country to sort of wave a red flag against it? It was India.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember, the Indian Foreign Minister Jai Shankar and subsequently the RBI governor had gone to town saying that they are not likely to move away from the dollar payments scheme, and they will continue to only stick to the dollar payments. That has caused a certain amount of problem for the other BRICS countries to seriously work on this cross-border country payments and all. So then, there are what are called some black sheep within the BRICS group today, whether we like it or not, that they would be definitely behind the scenes, will try to pull it down in moving in a kind of a much more radical or much more coherent plan to target the US. It has to be acknowledged that the BRICS group is a threat to the US, and it also says it openly that they want to create a certain architecture among the developing countries, particularly. It is also a fact that China is a key member, and China is the world's second largest economy. So there will be a certain element of Chinese, whether we call it domination or initiatives, will certainly take precedence over others. But these could be sort of, negotiated pragmatically, unless some countries do not seriously undermine it. So there are those dangers that, it still doesn't have a kind of structural binding presence yet. It's not a treaty like the treaty bodies where you have rights and obligations and all. It's still evolving, and it'll certainly take some time for it to reach a point where it can call itself as a group that can clearly direct and direct the global trade. Because you have to agree that 40% of the population and roughly around a quarter, that is almost 24% of global trade, BRICS has a huge important role, more so when other counter groups like G7 is unable to, because of Donald Trump. He's also wrecked G7. So today G7 is a divided body, and it has more or less lost its relevance. So BRICS also will face this kind of headwinds, from time to time, particularly countries which have very close proximity with US and which have tensions with China, or for that matter.
Ravi, theoretically, is it possible for, say, the like what the BRICS is proposing, to have an exchange, a currency of exchange that is not the dollar. Is it possible?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're not saying that they will create a new currency per se. They're saying that cross-border trade among the countries can be sort of squared off in your currencies, local currency. So you're not, I mean, primarily, that's also a shift. Of course, it has implications because most of the BRICS trade is largely dominated by China. So there is the yuan, dominance that would be there. But at least, I mean, then you have countries which are facing sanctions like Russia, particularly after the Ukrainian war, where sanctions are imposed on all its assets. 300 billion of Russian dollars, their assets are frozen. And recently, the European Union has started using interest out of the frozen assets to fund Ukrainian war, like the UK is doing at this point of time. So, I mean, it is the whole idea of arriving at this new payment mechanism or initiative is to address these threats that are constantly emerging from the dollar monopolized world, particularly by the US. I mean, the Biden administration, when the Ukrainian war started, in one go had imposed across the board all kinds of sanctions. Now, that is an economic warfare, while Russia certainly has violated the UN Charter and things like that. The US has also violated by creating this economic warfare through the dollar domination that it has. So it's still early period, these things evolve. They take a glacial kind of pace. So they could take several years, but it's possible and it will definitely happen because, today the dollar is so badly sunk after Donald Trump. So it's posing problems to other currencies as well.
Yeah. Ravi, coming back to BRICS, say its existence over the last 16 years, has it played a major role in any event in terms of world trade or in politics? Is there any top of the line, if one can call it an achievement of BRICS so far?
Yeah, it has. For example, in trade, the South-South trade has dramatically increased in the past 10 years or 15 years. Similarly, China, BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, has definitely helped several developing countries in a big way, physical capital, by creating physical capital assets and all. Though these are Chinese, but it has also sort of an underlining of the BRICS kind of initiatives. And today, it's the developing countries which really have a major say in developments, global economy, trade, and things like that. So it's too early to say what are the concrete gains from the BRICS, but there are palpable gains. Sometimes they can be seen more starkly. And sometimes, one has to read into what's happening and what could, because most of the other structures are all falling apart. So I would think in those lines that it's too early to say, but there are gains. The big observation one can make is the growing South-South trade, which is a very important thing.
And, based in Geneva, you are privy to, so many multilateral organizations, their discussions over so many years.
Yeah.
from that point of view, if you look at BRICS, where do you think BRICS stands? Does BRICS stand a chance in this era of unilateralism and threat from the US and all that? I mean, how do you think it can handle?
I mean, there have been, for example, in the WTO negotiations on several issues, the BRICS countries always have common meetings in order to decide what positions they should take. Oftentimes, they may not take, agreed positions because also countries' interests matter. Then the presence of the BRICS is seen by other developing countries, the least developed countries, is a very important development in the sense they tend to align their positions, which is happening. There are, of course, some tensions in the BRICS countries on the multilateral trade front. For example, China and India have very big tensions on what are called plurilateral issues. That's a different story altogether. But it's possible, it's still emerging. So in this particular phase of unilateral, nakedly extortive tariffs, it will be somewhat difficult to expect BRICS countries to stand up as a BRICS group. Ultimately, countries have to deal with their immediate, immediate needs. So there will be positions, each country taking somewhat independently and individually. But as this crisis sort of deepens when the US realizes that it is not going to benefit out of this, then it will definitely help as a kind of a shot in the arm for the BRICS countries to come much more closer and put the sort of weight on the US to withdraw from this. It's of course not going to happen immediately. It may not happen even next year, but it's a process in which several things are playing out. So there is a time to watch and only positively expect that something better will happen.
So also you have India now going to take over as the group's presidency next year.
Yeah.
Do you expect anything different? I mean,
I have seen what happened in the G20 when India did convene this meeting. Much of it was all propaganda and headline management, except there was one very controversial initiative that had happened at the G20 trade. That was to link trade between India and the Middle East and Israel with Western countries. Now, that is recently there's a big article in the Financial Times where India is also party to, it's shown that India is, this whole India initiative is also part of the genocide that's happening in Palestine, where this trade primarily is rooted through that area. So when you ask this question, I'm a bit skeptical, and given what India today, the way it's sort of boxed into some kind of ice. As Trump is isolated, India too, in some ways, is isolated. So we'll have to wait and watch, but I'll take with a pinch of salt that India will play the ball as other dominant BRICS countries like China or Brazil or South Africa will play. I'll give you one example. For example, yesterday, I noticed something very strange. the Indian Prime Minister and the Brazilian President Lula da Silva, they were. This was when the Prime Minister Modi was felicitated with a major Brazilian award. In the ceremony where Lula spoke a great deal about BRICS, and this is in the face of the 10% tariff he had already announced, Trump had already announced. So Lula spoke a lot about how we have to come together, strengthen BRICS, and to fight this unilateralism. When the turn came to Prime Minister Modi, he didn't mention the word BRICS at all. He merely spoke about, So it'll be interesting to see what will happen in 2026 BRICS meeting. But the government will try, of course, for its major publicity, propaganda mileage. I'm not sure whether it will do something very seriously at that meeting, or it will bring some serious initiatives which really strengthen and catalyze the BRICS grouping, BRICS group to embark on very ambitious initiatives.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. I think that was. Thanks for talking to the Federal. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dakshin.